Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. And thanks for joining us today on Thursday, April 2nd. And we're here. We're here on day 3 of our TechStrong TV coverage, leading up to our TechStrong conference on June 4th and maybe even beyond that. Thanks for joining us. As usual, whether you're watching us on your computer at TechStrong TV or Digital Anarchist Live, or Facebook Live, or YouTube DevOps TV channel, or maybe even LinkedIn Live, or even on Roku TV, or Apple TV, or Amazon Fire TV. There's plenty of choices to catch TechStrong TV. I also want to mention that for those of you watching us live, we do air at 9:30 Eastern Standard or Eastern Time every morning. But we're also available on demand throughout the day. So if you are in a different time zone or you didn't catch the 9:30 show, feel free within an hour or two after broadcast, the on-demand version is up and running on the OTT channels, meaning Amazon, Roku, and Apple TV. The on-demand version is available, I think, pretty much all day, right from 9:30 on. So you can catch it there. The idea here is to try to get it to you no matter how you want to consume it, because in today's world, we're a little bit all over the place in terms of where we're working, how we're accessing the internet, when we're accessing the internet, and so forth. Meanwhile, welcome. I hope everyone watching this as well. The news continues on the COVID-19 front, and the good news is at least on some states and some of the numbers I've seen here in the U.S., we're seeing a less of an exponential growth. I wouldn't call it a flattening of the curve quite yet, but certainly less of an exponential growth. On the bad side, the fatality numbers just continue to mount, and of course it saddens us all. For those of you who caught yesterday's show, we had a really great panel on burnout and in the workplace, and the flip side of that is what we're going through now. And I realized that I posted something on my own personal Facebook page yesterday about isolation and depression, and that if people need someone to talk to reach out. And I want to look, it's affecting us in my own household. I know. Staying home, not really going out much is tough. And so I encourage you, if you can get out to an open space and maybe grab some sunshine, it really does help. I know I've been either going for a walk early in the morning, or I walk right before or after dinner every day just to get out and get a little exercise. So try to do that, but also, take advantage a lot of these virtual tools. Stay in touch with your colleagues, stay in touch with your family and friends. We all need a little help during these hard times. Okay, as has become our norm, I want to introduce a couple of items that we're going to be highlighting today. The first is a video that we are going to break into 2 parts, and it features one of my favorite ladies in DevOps. It's Rosalind Radcliffe. Rosalind is a distinguished engineer, and she is kind of the main evangelist for the IBM Z, the IBM Enterprise Systems for DevOps. I mean, she's probably done more around IBM mainframe and Z systems on DevOps than anyone, and not just IBM, on mainframes in general. Rosalind has done more, understands more about how we can make your mainframe relevant in today's DevOps world, and more than relevant, indispensable. Because let's face it, mainframes are sort of an indispensable tool. If you have them in your particular organization, you're not ripping them out. And the fact is, something like 98% of the Fortune 100 have mainframes. Any large or even medium-sized financial institution, many healthcare organizations all, run on systems of record on mainframe. So Rosalind's great like that. But this presentation I'm going to show you is not so much about mainframe. It's about the value of value stream for DevOps and how you value stream management, the whole value stream process. So I think you'll really enjoy this whether you have a mainframe or not. If you're curious about value stream, you're interested in value stream process, have a listen to this video from Rosalind Radcliffe. And this was from a virtual event that we did with the Z team, about 6 months ago now, at DevOps, DEVOPZ.io. And that whole environment is still up on the web, though it's not live. You can still watch all of the presentations from that event there. So let's head over now to Rosalind and part one of the value stream process.
Welcome to this virtual summit on DevOps in the multi-cloud world. I'm Rosalind Radcliffe, and today I'm here to talk to you about value stream assessments. Understanding your value stream can really help in your transformation to DevOps. The important thing to recognize in our world today, organizations are large and complex. You have lots of things going on and lots of parts to the process. And if you think about this, what you're trying to do is have an idea and deliver that idea to your end customers. How do you effectively do that? What is your process? That's your value stream. That's what it takes to get this idea all the way from the beginning to the running system. And what are all those pieces in the middle? That's what you want to understand when you're looking at your value stream. You want to understand all of the steps that it takes. You want to understand all the parts that go through this. If we look at this picture, this is a idealized version of a picture. It's a nice, simple, straight line. That's not really the reality of most organizations. And so when we look at your value stream, you really want to understand all of those piece parts, all of the pieces that make up this process. How do you get the idea? How do you get that idea into the process? What does it take to work through that idea in order to be in a form that it actually could then be implemented and delivered? When you look at this picture, it looks pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I've got this little idea box, and I've got the customers on the end, and I have each one of these little stages. But in your world, it's more than that. What is it that I have an idea that gets through this process? And if you look at the picture again, you'll notice it's mostly a DevOps process. It's the development process from the very beginning through the implementation, and the idea comes in at the beginning. One of the things we found when people look at their value stream is that idea into the process actually can take the longest amount of time. The time isn't being spent in the part that is measurable in a traditional way. It's being spent in that time between the business and IT to understand what the real requirements are. And so when we look at this process, we really need to facilitate and understand how things are going today to be able to understand what your value stream is, where things are getting stuck, what is the waste in the system, what are the handoffs, what does it take to get an idea into the process? What does it take to get that idea and understand what that idea is? And then once I have that idea and it's in the process, what does it take to actually implement that idea? When we think about this in a little bit different form, more realistically, I have ideas coming into the system, and I need to understand those ideas, and then I need to plan the ideas. I need to understand what's the priority, how important is this idea, and get it into the system. I need to analyze the idea to understand what it takes to implement that idea, that change, that function. And then I need to actually write some code when it's related to that idea, assuming we're talking about an IT function. When we think about that coding part, it's not a code and now I'm done. It's a code, build, and do my individual testing. What does it take for me to be able to do that? What is the effort I have to go through in order to get the code that I need to change, understand what code I need to change, do that build process, do that unit testing, get that feedback, and do that loop? What are the stages that get in my way? If I'm a developer, can I do that? Or do I have to work with someone else to do my build process? Can I actually do my initial testing? Can I put it in a place that I can test it? Do I have to wait for some other team to pass that over to another system to have this process flow? What are the individual steps as part of this process? And after I get it coded and it's unit tested and I want to provision and deploy it, what does it take? Can I provision and deploy a system for myself? Can I have it running in my own environment? Can I see that and have it running? Can I get that instantaneous feedback? Or do I have to just, I don't know, call up somebody else, wait for something? Do I have to open a ticket? If I have to open a ticket, then I have to wait for it to get into their queue. They have to decide when they're going to work on it, get back to me, and then it can go through the process. And if I'm doing testing, how do I get my testing done? Is it a manual process? Is it an automated process? Is it a separate test team? Is it part of my current team? Is it my own, the team I'm working in that's going to do this work? How do I go through all this process? And as you're going through this understanding of the process, the next piece is, how are you actually doing it? What are the tools that you're using as part of this process? And when we talk about value stream and we talk about DevOps transformation, it's all about culture. It's all about working together. But when we think about it, at the core, there are a set of tools that help us do this work. They're tools that either help us or actually get in the way, but the tools are there. Those tools can help us understand what are the problems, what are the issues, what are the touch points, what are the transitions, what are the pieces that fit in this process, and how can I measure the process? The first thing that's part of this is, what is my ideas? How am I tracking my ideas? Are all my ideas, or all the things that have to be implemented, in a backlog? Are they visible? Is it clear to the organization what needs to be implemented in order to get this idea to the end consumer? And with that backlog, is there one backlog? Is there one way to see all that work? As I move through the process, source code management, where am I managing my source code? Is that adding difficulty to my value stream? Is that getting in the way? What's my coordinator? If I have a way of coordinating with a CI/CD coordinator today, pull the data from that to understand how you're working and how the flow is going. All of these different tools can help you provide information about your value stream and how things are flowing through the environment. They also can help give you an idea of whether or not you have added waste in the system. If you can see that I do a build, but then I have to wait months, weeks, before that's deployed to be tested, that shows me waste in the system. It shows me what's going on in the system. Having this clear identification is very important to understand how these pieces are fitting together. And as this chart points out, when we're thinking about this, it's not just a single platform or a single part of an application. When we're thinking about this process, it's really an organizational discussion. It's including that front-end system, that mid-tier, that back-end system, no matter where it's running. It's including the systems, whether or not they're running in a public cloud somewhere, a private cloud, a dedicated cloud, or running on my back-end ZOS system. If we think about all of those different parts of this process, we need to understand how we flow between them. How does work get between the different parts? Is it different teams? Am I opening a ticket to say this other team needs to do a set of work for me? How do I get that visibility through the system? And so what you really want to do is really understand that flow. You want to understand how you're working through the system. And you want to go through from the very beginning of the idea through each one of these stages and understand how you're working. How do you actually deliver this value? How do you get it through the system? What are the steps that you as an organization have to take to get the idea in the system, get it implemented, get it tested, and get it out to the end user? And that's all of the pieces of the system, not just the front-end part, the mid-tier part, the back-end part. How do each one of those groups collaborate and work together? And the best way to do this kind of work is with a value stream assessment. It's to go through the way you work, the way you understand how you're doing things, and allow you to move forward. So if you think about this, how do you do this? You get a team of people together that says, okay, this is how we work today. We need a team that includes all of the important parts of the value stream. That means anything that contributes to the value stream. That really means everybody. That means someone representing how you do development. That means someone representing how you do development on the front-end system, on the back-end system. That means how you do testing, how you get flow through the system, how you make changes to the back-end system, how you deploy the application, how you change infrastructure, how you run the system, how you manage the system, how the business gets requirements into the system, how you measure whether or not that idea actually got delivered. This entire set of people need to come together to have this session, to work through and understand what you are doing today. And honestly, I do these value stream assessments with lots of different companies all the time. And one of the things that's best about this is actually getting the organization itself together in one room to have this work effort, this collaboration. One customer called it a cathartic experience. Now that sounds a little strange coming out of a workshop that you're doing, but that's because they're really hearing about all the different steps that everyone has to go through. When we think about the value stream, we're trying to do is identify that waste, identify the problems, identify the things that are getting in the way of delivering the value. And when you get people together, they start to hear the other side of the story. I know in one experience we were talking about, well, development gets done and it takes forever for it to get tested, or test is done and it takes forever to get it deployed. Well, in this discussion, when you have the understanding that in order to do the deploy, I have to make all of these changes in the system, I have to understand all of these impacts, then you start to understand why maybe it's not just once it's done, developed, it goes through. There are lots of impacts that have to be addressed throughout the cycle. So having this group get together to understand the entire environment, to understand all of the pieces, helps you, one, understand what your value stream is, understand where your waste is, and understand how you can move forward. We do value stream assessments working with a customer, and we facilitate the discussion. But it's really you. It's you coming to the session and explaining how you're doing the work. Getting into a room together, using a whiteboard, going through all of the different piece parts of your process. Remember this whole entire process. We want to understand all of the parts of this process, how the idea gets made, how it flows through the system, how you can develop and test, and how you release it.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everyone, that was part one of our value stream process presentation from Rosalind Radcliffe. I hope you're enjoying it. Let's now return to Rosalind and finish up with part two of the video.
As you pull out all those factors in how you're working today, the waste becomes obvious. It becomes clear you're waiting for another team, or you're waiting for a system, or you're waiting for approvals for things to happen. Or it can be as simple, you're waiting for the release date. All of those things can be easily identified as part of this effort, and you can lay out the entire process that you go through. Understanding that process allows you to then identify where is the most important waste to remove first. When you start with a system that is not fully automated, and you have a number of manual handoffs, and you're looking at your flow, you need to identify the areas that are causing the biggest problem that can be fixed the easiest in many ways without some other challenge. So for example, you might discover your biggest problem is your end-to-end test, and how to do that end-to-end test at the very end of the release to make sure everything is fitting together, that final verification. But you can't do that final verification unless you have an automated deploy process, or you have enough automated testing in order to do that process, or you're getting too many problems deferred all the way to the end. All of those things make it more difficult to say that the most important thing to fix is the end-to-end test phase. You need to look at the process and go, okay, what can I fix? Where can I get value? When I do value stream assessments with customers, one of the things that comes out, if they don't yet have an automated deploy process, and when I say automated deploy, I mean fully automated deploy. So not only are you deploying the application, but you're deploying the infrastructure changes as well. So everything necessary to run that application is being deployed as part of that application. Whether or not I'm deploying into a brand new environment or I'm deploying into an existing environment, all of the changes, all of the updates need to be part of that process. If you don't already have an automated deployment process, that many times may be the first thing you want to address, because you need that in order to move forward. But then, wait a minute. What if I don't have an SCM or a source code manager for all of my artifacts? Well, if I don't have a source code manager for all my artifacts, then I can't actually feed it into a deploy process to do the automated deploy. So that's the thing I have to address first. So what we do as part of this value stream assessment is we come to you, understand your flow, understand your biggest problems, and then work with you to come up with a roadmap to understand how can you best move forward. What are the best ways for you to improve your process so that you can align the flow so that you can deliver business value as fast as your organization can deliver it. The other thing that's good about these value stream assessments is we help provide information about how other people have done it. So I've done these value streams with lots of companies, and I've watched lots of organizations evolve over the years based on this feedback. And so they've slowly but surely put the changes in place. They've made a change, adopted one change, saw the value from that change, and then moved forward. We look at one organization, they started with, I need a modern development environment for all of my organization. My ZOS developers have been left out of the process. They've been left behind. And now I can't get young kids to do development for ZOS because that next gen expects a set of tools and a set of capability. And so the first step was provide a modern development experience so that everyone has that access to those standard tools that they expect to use. Once we got through that, what's the next step? Well, I need an automated build and deployment process. So that's the next step that they worked on. But other companies, that's not where their biggest business problem is. And so that's why this value stream assessment is critical. It is the way to understand how you can do this transformation and you can move forward. The other thing we're doing as part of this value stream assessment is understanding where you are on your transformation. Most people are going through some form of agile transformation, working toward moving away from waterfall practices toward a more agile practice. But everybody's at a different state in this transformation, and everyone has chosen a different way to go about this. And so by having other people listen and having this group of people listen to how you're currently doing work, and based on our experience working with other clients, we can help you understand some next steps to allow you to move forward in a more efficient way. One thing that happens in this transition almost all the time is people go from waterfall to scrum fall. And one of the things that this assessment can help you understand is where you are on that scrum fall assessment, where you are in terms of improving maybe the development process itself, but then handing it over to test, having that waterfall to the next phase. Yes, you've improved one process, but not the entire thing. The other reason that you want to look at a full value stream assessment is when you do this, by looking at the entire life cycle from the very beginning to the end, you can identify all of the challenges, all of the waste, and all of the areas to address. Worked with one organization, and they significantly worked over a number of years to improve their development practices, their testing practices, their deployment practices, and they got to this 2-week delivery. And it was a cross-platform team, so they could deliver in 2 weeks across the entire application. But the business was still saying it's too slow. And when they looked at the entire flow, they discovered it was still taking 9 months and 2 weeks to deliver function, because it was taking 9 months just to get the idea to the point where it could then be implemented. So if you don't look at the entire value stream, you're not solving the problem. You're not understanding all of the items. The other thing that's important to look at in this value stream assessment is understand what your business challenges are and what are your business drivers. Each organization has a different set of business drivers. And when we do this assessment, we work with you to understand what those drivers are to make sure that when we come up with a roadmap, we can identify the items that will help those business drivers the best. For example, if you think about an organization that says they want to deliver faster with higher quality, but they also want to improve employee morale, they want to improve employee satisfaction and engagement, and they want to become an industry leader from the standpoint of developer experience, you're going to have a set of items that you want to look at first, improving the actual experience as well as other items. Other items where they have an issue with quality today and they need to improve quality, then automated testing may be the most important thing to look at first. So we need to understand where those business drivers are. There are lots of ways to do a value stream assessment, and there are lots of opportunities. There's lots of material available out there to talk about value stream assessments, to talk about looking at your value stream and understanding what your value stream is. Books like Project to Product is an example of a book that helps you do this kind of understanding of your value stream and gives you a whole bunch more stories about different ways that people have gone about this transformation and how you can look at the transformation. No matter how you do a value stream assessment, it helps you understand where you are and how you can best move forward. But the reason I recommend a value stream assessment that we have available is it helps facilitate that discussion. Having an outside person come in and ask you a series of questions helps drive the discussion. It helps get people talking. It helps get people to actually spell out how things are really working. One of the experiences I have many times when I go into a shop, it's here's our workflow, this is how it's documented, so this is how we do things. And then you start asking the questions, but how do you really do it? What is the task you really do? And you find out how the organization really works instead of how it's documented to work. That's not to say that they're not following the audit requirements, but people usually work around processes that get in their way. So understanding the actual workflow is critical about this. Understanding how things really are flowing. The other thing to think about, let's say you have done a value stream and you've worked really hard and you have a wonderful process with parts of your team, but parts of your organization have been left behind. Maybe it's time to do a value stream for those parts. And we've run into that in a number of organizations that are well down this path in the distributed side. So their front-end mobile systems, their public cloud systems, or their front-facing systems have gone through a transition, and they're doing DevOps workflows, and they've understood their value stream. But guess what? The guys doing the back-end work, the ZOS development, many times got left out. And if that's true for you, then the value stream assessment is just as appropriate for you to figure out how to bring that existing set of assets, that ZOS system, into the modern development practices, to bring it into the same flow. At the end of this, you have a roadmap. You have an opportunity to move forward, to bring everybody together into this system. Hopefully this has been a nice introduction to a value stream assessment. You've learned a little bit more about how you can do it. And if you want to take advantage of our value stream assessment, you can sign up for the value stream assessment on this link, or, though I'm not sure I warned her, you can contact Jen directly. No matter where you are in the world, Jen can forward it to the right person in the world to help you with your value stream assessment and help you get set up for this opportunity. It's a one-day fun. You get to have an experience of hearing how your organization really works, get the information out, get a report that says basically what you told us, as well as a roadmap for how you can move forward. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this session.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. Hope you enjoyed that presentation from Rosalind Radcliffe. As I said, Rosalind's a really, really bright woman and passionate, and no matter what topic she's speaking on, that passion usually shines through. So I hope you found that interesting. I wanted to bring you a more recent interview that I did now, and it's with my friend Sasha Labouré. Sasha is the CEO of CloudBees. And you know, CloudBees recently celebrated, I think it's its 10th year, or 8th year, something, anniversary. CloudBees, of course, was always one of the leaders in the DevOps space. It was the Enterprise Jenkins company. And as you probably know, about a year or two ago, last year, Jenkins was given over to the CDF, the Continuous Delivery Foundation, which is part of the Linux Foundation and is a sister foundation to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Well, recently, CloudBees, put out you want to call it a momentum release, but it really was a look back at, what CloudBees has done over the past year. And it served as my reason for, dialing up Sasha. He's home in Switzerland, riding out this COVID-19 event, just like many of you are. And I had a chance to catch up with Sasha. We spoke about the past year and what CloudBees has done and why he's excited about next year. But we didn't ignore the elephant in the room either, and spoke a little bit about what this COVID-19 situation means for CloudBees and for companies like this, right? Well-funded venture companies, maybe on track for IPOs. What is an economic downturn look like for them? And, Sasha, like any good CEO, I think is realistic but optimistic and shows great leadership. But you can judge that for yourself. Let me introduce you now. Sasha Labouré, CEO of CloudBees.
This is Digital Anarchist at DevOps World Jenkins World, San Francisco, 2019.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com on Digital Anarchist, and we're live at digitalanarchist.live. If you're out there watching us, we are in the Moscone Center in San Francisco for DevOps World Jenkins World, CloudBees, and I'm really happy to be joined when we talk about CloudBees. It's the guy to talk about. CloudBees CEO, co-founder Sasha Labouré.
Yes, you're doing it well.
Man, I've been practicing since the last time, I stay in front of the mirror, Labor Day without the D. Labouré.
Yeah, you're getting there.
But
I'm
getting there. I'm hoping to apply for a job soon. Anyway,
all right.
All kidding aside, my friend Sasha is CEO. Sasha, first of all, congratulations. You look out, and people at home can't see us, but beyond the little broadcast area, we're in the middle of the exhibit floor, and it's really a huge floor, right? I mean, I've been coming to these. This is my fourth one we're doing video at. I mean, what an amazing evolution of growth here. And it doesn't, I've been a CEO, I am a CEO, I've been a founder. It doesn't happen without a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, many airline miles,
Exactly.
and frankly, just a lot of angst, wondering, did I make the right decision? Are we doing the right thing? Is that the right person? In your case, did we acquire the right company and
Exactly,
so
yeah.
forth? So congratulations.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
So big news for Jenkins World, DevOps World this year, though, is really kind of the focus on SDM.
Yes, yeah.
What
it's
does
true.
SDM stand for?
So it's software delivery management. If you've been in sales, you've probably heard CRM, right? And if you've been in finance, you've heard about ERPs. And everybody's talking about software eating the world, but no, we have no system for the actual delivery of that software. And that's really what we're building at CloudBees.
Yep. It's interesting. I actually, for those looking in live at home, they know this. But if not, you can go look on digitalanarchist.io. We interviewed Mo
Yep.
with the hair.
Yes,
Early-
Hair.
Aqua Hair. At Aqua Hair.
Yeah.
But we interviewed him earlier, and we spoke a little bit about sort of the evolution of, on the first day God created CI, let's say, right?
Yes.
And that was enough for a while, right? Just the idea of being able to implement a CI kind of pipeline into your organization was radical.
Yeah.
And over time, it became less and less radical. And then we said, wait, on the third day, let's do CD, right? And CD was separate from CI. It wasn't like taken out of a rib on the side or something, right? It was a separate thing. Oh, and then now we're seeing, well, what happens post-delivery, right? Post-CD or deployment, right? That's not the end of the app. But what we're seeing is rather than these being separate days of creation or whatever you want to call it, there's actually a continuum here.
Exactly, yes.
Right? These things all run in, they're part of the same bigger thing, and you've given a name to this bigger thing now.
Yes, that's a great way to see it.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Fair?
It's looking at it in a holistic fashion, the full thing. And we have lots of silo. It can be different teams, different projects, different tools being used, but you have all of those systems left and right. And we're in this situation today where essentially we wanted innovation, more innovation. We got more innovation. We wanted more velocity. We got more velocity.
Yeah.
But then the companies wake up and they're like, oh my God, we're going to have all of those streams of changes going left and right, and we have no clue what's going on. And if the answer to that is let's add more friction so we can control things, it's probably a bad idea. That's what we spend so much time trying to remove.
Right.
So we need to find a way to get peace of mind and information and insight into what's taking place without disrupting that flow.
And without slowing the flow. right?
Exactly.
Because if anything, companies want to go faster.
Yes.
Right, so when we look at, and this is classic, whether it be the Phoenix project or the goal, the book, the goal, we look at bottlenecks, we look at resource constraints, and sometimes we don't see one till we solve another, right? So we
Exactly.
solve one thing, and then we see where the next
Bottleneck
on the
is,
horizon,
yes,
right?
exactly.
And so I think it is part of that continuum, and I think SDM is a fantastic name for it. But now, Sasha, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So we got the name. I think we've explained what it is.
Yep.
How does CloudBees help with this?
So tomorrow during the keynote, and it's going to be streamed as well, so you'll get to see the first demonstration of SDM by CloudBees. And I'm very excited about that. When my team did the demo, I was like, where can I buy it, right? It's really that kind of thing. Because I think a lot of people conceptually get it very easily. Especially if you have not just done development in your life, but you've looked at the bigger picture and faced some of the problem associated to not finding where the bottlenecks are, understanding your organization. We all suffer from that, including CloudBees. And once you start seeing this in motion and how it helps you make decisions and discover facts, this is just amazing to watch. So we're going to be having preview customers starting, right now. Using the system. It's available as a SaaS, and we're super excited.
Excellent. Speaking of SaaS, one of the things Mo and I spoke about was that, from this day forward, the edict at CloudBees is all our software that we develop will be SaaS first software.
Exactly, and that's not an easy decision to take.
No, not
We
an
started
easy
in
decision.
SaaS, right? We were a platform as a service back in
Right.
2010, so we know both sides of the wall. And you always think that your neighbor's garden is going to be nicer than yours, right? The reality is that depending on your market, you need to be careful at what pace you're going to accelerate and be SaaS versus not SaaS. And I think we've done pretty well on that front, but now with the cloud accelerating and SaaS being more and more open, especially for things like build and test, that's becoming a must-have for us. So we're investing a lot on that front.
Fantastic. Another subject I want you to, if it's okay with you, I want you to
Yes.
talk about. CD Foundation.
Yep.
So I know they're putting on sort of a mini summit within the summit at KubeCon Cloud NativeCon in San Diego. But there was some interesting meetings here
Yes.
at DevOps World, Jenkins World. There'll be some CDF sort of announcements and activity. Can you share with our audience a little bit about?
Yes, there is a lot of things going on at the CDF. It's still a pretty young foundation, obviously, right? It started barely a few months ago, so they're still staffing it and so on. But at this point, it's already exciting to see first 4 amazing projects, right? Jenkins, Jenkins X, Tecton, and Spinnaker. So
Yep.
I think those are really well-known projects.
Yep.
I was at the Jenkins Contributor Summit yesterday. About 150 people were there to hack and code and so on. So that's pretty amazing. And there is a lot more to come from a CDF standpoint. They're going to have new projects, new initiatives around best practices.
New members?
New members. So the list of members, I love it because as you can expect, you can find the typical software vendors, including CloudBees. You can find the cloud vendors. But what I appreciate very much is the number of Jenkins users.
And user organizations.
Exactly, users as using organization
Right.
of Jenkins or Spinnaker or Tecton or Jenkins X. And that to me is really a solid foundation for the community because as a vendor, I can tell you, right, it's always easier to get vendor excited by their own things than it is to get actual users to
Breathing
go and
their
say,
own
we like
exhaust,
it.
as we call it, right?
So I hope to encourage a lot of people coming to Jenkins World, DevOps World this week to actually become member of the CDF, either in their own name or in the name of their company. But I think this is going to be a great way to further extend the passion.
Absolutely. And I what I think, as you said, look, there were big cloud vendors, there were big vendors. You know, there's some great organizations that are joining, including some educational organizations of which I'm part of. But beyond that, I think it also was a great democratization, if you will, of, look, Spinnaker is a great tool. I mean, there are big organizations using
Yeah.
Spinnaker. Jenkins, what do we have to say about Jenkins?
Yeah.
It's the standard. Jenkins X, within a year or two, rode this Kubernetes wave, and, Tectonic, all great projects. But being able to have a public foundation, without an axe to grind, without a dollar to be made, if you will,
Yep.
right, behind it, we have seen, and you've been involved in open source a long time,
Yes.
right? We have seen the maturation of open source where it was very anti-commercial at first, right?
Yep,
The Rich
absolutely.
Stallmans of the world and all of that, right? And then there was a period where every open source project seemed to have a corporate godfather,
Exactly,
right? A
yes,
vendor
yes.
godfather,
Yeah.
who was really running the show, pulling the strings in the background. And now we've entered this new foundation era, right? Where we have a CD foundation, where we have a cloud native foundation, we have an open cloud foundry foundation, right? Where the keys to the car are with people who, are a little bit more independent, who don't have that vendor incentive, if you will.
Exactly.
And I think as a community, we all do better for it.
Yeah, I agree. It's another step in the maturation of the model.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the other models are not good, right?
No.
They're successful for other companies, but I think it's a maturity level because it also ignores some of the ego related to that, right? Because it's my project, my company, my
Right.
thing, and being able to say, okay, we're going to be better together. takes a leap of faith, and I think
It does
it's great.
take a leap of faith. And you can't make wine before it's time, right? You couldn't do this foundation model maybe when you were doing JBoss, for instance.
Yes.
Right? Because back then, open source was fighting for acceptance at the corporation level. And you needed to show that there was an adult behind the wheel.
Yes.
Right? Who was going to be able to be there for support and training and roadmap and to make sure it was enterprise ready.
And we tried to do a number of things, right? We had DevOps Express. We have a number of
Yeah.
initiatives we tried. They were very vendor-centric, and that's a weakness of that model, right?
is.
Unless, well, it can work, right? But I think if it can work with an open source model, it's much
Absolutely.
better. Yeah.
But there's a flip side to it, and I'm interested in, and this is going to be a unique thing that only you can.
And we're live, right?
We're live.
Oh my
We're
God.
live. I'm going to put you on here. So all of that's fine and dandy, but still, it had to take you a lot of sleepless nights thinking about Jenkins is the crown jewel here. Right? Do I just give it away?
Well, yes and no, because Jenkins has always been an independent community.
Absolutely.
Right?
And CloudBees did a great job of
Yeah,
that.
we always try to keep it at arm's length. And the strong decision for us was we don't want to keep investing if we don't, make it, if we're going to structure something for other people, there needs to be other people. Right?
It can't be for other
It can
people's
be the same
benefit, all
thing,
at our expense.
but CloudBees doing it, right? And so that's why I'm so excited about all of those companies coming in, because that's a true objective we're looking for.
Excellent. It's still, for a CEO, it's a big decision.
Yes, it is. It is.
So kudos on that.
Thank you.
So spoke about all of that. Let's talk a little bit about Jenkins World, DevOps World. We have the big announcements coming in the keynote tomorrow. Actually, there's keynotes tonight.
Yes, there is
Isn't
a CDF keynote tonight,
Right.
and tomorrow morning, PST, we have the CloudBees keynote.
Excellent. What else? What else about the event are you excited about?
Well, more than 2,000 people, 75 companies that will be sponsoring the event, so it's huge. Obviously, the Moscone Center, which is, for many of us, means something, right? I remember in 2003 going to Java 1 and doing those things. I remember doing JBoss 1 in a rogue way at the Thirsty Bear, right?
Really?
Yeah, because we're not allowed to be at Java 1.
Yeah.
So we created JBoss 1. We're handling flyers in the middle between the two Moscone, and the security would come to kick us out. So this is filled with emotion. Plus, this new Moscone West has so much light.
Oh, I know.
So much space that I think people will recognize this and will very much feel home this week here.
Absolutely. I am lucky enough, we do for the RSA security conference every year, I do a DevSecOps event. And this year we moved to Moscone North because it was that big.
Wow.
And, but we've done it here in the West, and I've had my broadcast. I mean, they did, all of the Moscones are nice now. North and South, since the renovation, are beautiful. The rooms are beautiful. But this one was really done more modern from the get-go, right? It didn't need a renovation, so to speak. And it's a beautiful place to hold an event. But it's also, you know what? I was here yesterday, as were you, and coming up on the second and third floor and seeing all the training going on, right? And I peeked in a couple of the rooms, because that's what I do. I peeked in a couple of the rooms. Great attendance.
Yes.
For the most part, every room, all the chairs were filled.
People want to learn about DevOps. They want to learn tricks. That's what I love about this space, is that it's not step 1, step 2, step 3, and you're done.
Right.
It's a discovery, it's a journey. And to have all of that passion, all of those people spend time together to just learn from each other is absolutely amazing and a key part of DevOps World.
I think what's what makes the community special, too.
Yeah.
Sasha, I promised you 15 minutes. We're a little over. I apologize. But first of all, honestly, congratulations. You have a lot to be proud of here with this, my friend.
Thank you, Alan.
All right.
Great talking to you.
Sasha Liberet, CEO, co-founder, CloudBees, here at DevOps World, Jenkins World. This is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com. We're live on digitalanarchist.live. Check it out. Take care.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Hey everyone, we're back. I hope you enjoyed the Sacha Labouré interview. CloudBees has in many ways, it's not a relaunch, but it's a refocus as they move into this software delivery management, and then beyond just Jenkins, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform. And we wish Sacha and the CloudBees and all of the bees nothing but success on that. Now it's that time of our broadcast where I want to concentrate a little bit about some of the stories on our media ops sites, as well as some of the stories that we're seeing in the general news. And again, DevOps.com, Container Journal for Cloud Native Kubernetes, microservices, and of course Security Boulevard are our main sites, and we encourage you to check them out. What I'm going to be giving you is really just 3 or 4 of the headline articles, but Security Boulevard alone is publishing 50 or 60 stories a day, so there's something cyber related for just about anyone on there. DevOps is 3 or 4 articles a day. Container Journals 1 to 2 articles a day. So feel free to stop by the sites, have a look, and let me, you'll find something of interest. I picked out a few, though, that I wanted to highlight for you. One is a Security Boulevard article called Limiting the Impact of the Cybercrime Pandemic. And, this one it talks about something that you've probably been hearing about, but I don't know if it's received the attention it deserves. And that is, look, we're having a pandemic with COVID, right? This isn't a computer virus, it's a virus affecting humans. But part and parcel with that is, this is why we can't have nice things. The black hat community, the cyber criminal community, have jumped on this with a vengeance. And as I mentioned yesterday, some groups have said they won't be attacking hospitals, healthcare providers, and everything else. But that hasn't stopped others, and a whole bunch of them, from a whole bunch of phishing scams and other cybercrime-related activities that are using COVID to prey on our insecurities, to prey on our anxieties, to prey on people maybe a little less sophisticated cyber-wise, and try to, make money and create chaos and havoc, whether it be ransomware, or already we're starting to hear phone scams calling of people claiming to be the IRS and asking for your bank information so they can wire money from this $1,200 CARES program. No, the IRS won't be calling you for your bank information. Please don't fall victim to that, whether it be through email or a phone scam. But there's a wide range. One thing about cyber criminals, they have great imaginations and they're very ingenious, and they'll come up with new creative ways to try to separate you from your dollars. And so it's created its own pandemic. And I caution you all to really be careful, more vigilant than ever. You're working from home. You may not be in your regular environments. Don't click on links you're not sure of. Be wary of people asking you for any personal information. some of them look good and they're not. I mean, even be wary of websites, Facebook scams, everything. There's another pandemic underlying this COVID-19 pandemic, and that's a cybercrime pandemic. That's on Security Boulevard, by the way. It's limiting the impact of the cybercrime pandemic. Wanted to highlight another Security Boulevard article for you. And, as I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, how much attention Zoom is getting, and thank God for Zoom. Just this past week, I've attended a Zoom birthday party. I also had to attend a Zoom funeral, which was a first for me. Friend of ours' parents passed away, not COVID related, but couldn't get to the funeral, and they Zoomed it. And it was kind of surreal and macabre, but these are the times we live in. By the same token, Zoom there are privacy issues if you're not setting your Zoom up correctly. They're recommending using the waiting room. Don't give out your permanent Zoom address in public. A few other kinds of things. I'm actually writing an article on this right now. Hopefully it'll be up by maybe Friday. But collaboration tools essential but risky to remote work is the name of this article. And it's not just Zoom. I don't mean to highlight Zoom. What Zoom is doing is yeoman's work here. But whether it's Dropbox or Microsoft Teams or Skype or any other tools, Slack is another one, right, that we're all using a ton. These collaboration tools, they're essential to us being able to carry out our work day to day at home, but they're not without risk. So if you're not sure, ask your IT people, what is the best configuration? What can I do to lock down my collaboration tools? And again, don't leave your common sense back at the office. Bring it home with you, right? And be careful giving out personally identifiable information. Be careful giving out sensitive work data. Perfect example. These Zoom backgrounds that you could use, they're great. I've seen people on the planet Hoth and, in space and at the top of the world and on beaches and everywhere else. I've also seen people with work-related backgrounds, and make sure that work-related background doesn't have any confidential, sensitive information, because then anyone who's watching you on Zoom sees it as well. So be careful. Again, that's another article out on Security Boulevard. It's collaboration tools are essential but risky in remote work, and give it a check out. That is just two of probably 50 or 60 articles that'll be on Security Boulevard today. So as I said earlier, there's something cyber-related there for just about anyone. Do check it out. Next article I wanted to highlight comes to us from our Container Journal site today, and it's ensuring a smooth Kubernetes deployment. One of the things we were seeing a lot of with all this work from home is how do we do development and deployment remotely? And believe it or not, I don't think it's slowed down too much in terms of what we're doing there, right? People are still deploying software, still updating their apps and making all of that happen. People are still moving to Kubernetes, whether it be on serverless or on the any of the public cloud infrastructures, on bare metal, etc. And this is really a good how-to article on smoothing out the bumps that inevitably we all hit in, rolling out our kube deployments. So give it a check out. That's on Container Journal. There's a lot of great content there also on microservices and other container and cloud native and other container related news. So Container Journal. I wanted to highlight something. It's actually on DevOps.com because we haven't spun this site up yet, but it's in the IT as Code community on DevOps.com. And with IT as Code, we're not talking just to the DevOps people or the cyber or the SREs. It's really the generalist, the IT professional. And these are the folks who are responsible for making sure your email's working, your app's working, the network is good, all of the stuff that keeps the wheels on most organizations, even when we're not working remote. And, their world has been challenged in the last year or two with DevOps and Agile and the cloud native and open source and move to the cloud in general. We have a good article there called Comparing Three Approaches to Multi-Cloud Security Management. And unfortunately, in many mid-sized companies, they may not have that full-blown, full-time cyber team. And the IT team is tasked, and the IT generalist is tasked with a lot of the security functionality. So, they need to know this. And many organizations now are using AWS for something here and Google Cloud for something there, and of course Azure for some of their SaaS and other things that the Azure Cloud does well. And so how do we do multi-cloud security management? It's a great topic. It's a great article. It is on DevOps.com, and it's in the IT is Code community. And we hope to have the IT is Code website stood up maybe as early as July 1, we'll see. But we were planning that before all of this COVID stuff, so we'll see where that goes. But for now, you can get it on DevOps.com, and again, it's comparing three approaches to multi-cloud security management. And I think that those are the stories I want to highlight today because we're running a little over time. But again, those are just a couple of stories I wanted to bring to your attention. There's tons of great content on our Media Ops site. Do check them out, devops.com, containerjournal.com, securityboulevard.com, and there's a lot there for you if you're into it. In addition to that, we have a full range of webinars still going strong. We're probably doing 4 webinars a day, 4 webinars a week. So you can check those out on each of the sites. The webinars are live every day, and then they're on demand within the hour. So if you want to learn and find out some good tech tips and what's happening, stay on top of our webinars, ebooks, etc. And of course, our videos. Speaking of videos, let me now run into our next presentation I wanted to give you. This next one is actually a video I did with my good friend Andy Ellis. Andy, of course, is a longtime CSO at Akamai. He's probably one of the most well-known CSOs in the industry. Other than being a New England Patriots fan, Andy's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I say that tongue-in-cheek. Him and I go back and forth on football. But Andy's just a really bright, really intelligent guy who really has his thumb on things. I had a chance to sit down with Andy over at RSA the end of February on our Digital Anarchist live booth on Media Row there. And this is my interview with Andy Ellis, CSO of RSA.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA Conference 2019.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel for Digital Anarchist, Security Boulevard, and DevOps.com. We're here at the RSA 2019 conference. Happy to be joined by my friend Andy Ellis, CSO of Akamai. Andy, welcome.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate coming down here.
I should mention not only CSO of Akamai, but New England Patriot fan extraordinaire.
Absolutely.
Sporting his latest 6-time championship. And all I could say, Andy, is welcome to the 6-time club.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. And Steelers fans have been great to welcome us.
But we can't talk about football. Let's return to security. So, Andy, RSA is bigger than ever this year. I don't know if it's bigger and better, but certainly bigger. Is it better? How's RSA been for you?
So, I think it's a really good question of is bigger and better, do they go together? What it feels like is happening at RSA is it's almost like it's metastasizing. It's probably not a good one. That sounds like a cancer.
That's putting us off on the wrong foot.
But really, when you think about it, it used to be that this was just a security conference.
Yes.
Right, and now it's become a trade show that anchors so many other conferences that are happening around here. Mm-hmm. And there's the conference that is still RSA. You can still come and see speakers. There's this brilliant guy on Tuesday. I thought he was fantastic about risk management.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
It's pretty good. But you can also do other things, whether you're doing the AGC conference on Monday. Or any of the Innovation Sandbox or the DevOps.
DevSecOps days on Monday.
Right? Yeah, all of these things that are going on. Or you're just doing what we used to call the hallway track. I actually sort of think of it as the social media track. You made a comment that feels like some days Twitter is my RSA conference.
Yes.
Right, as we're just keeping track of what's going on and who's
Do you think that's why they don't have chairs in the hallways?
It's a really good question. It might be to keep us out of sitting in those hallways.
Just sitting there instead of going in sessions. I know now that you mention it.
But I think if you can make of this conference whatever you want, and I think that is better. There's not one right way anymore.
I think so, and I think it also though speaks to the breadth, whether you want to call it cyber or security or infosec or whatever. The breadth of this industry is. First of all, it's a much bigger tent, and it's a much bigger tent in a couple of ways. You see so many more women.
Yes.
You see a very large international, diverse, attendee kind of list and group. And that's got to be good. But it also, I think, speaks to the global nature of security. It was interesting. I've been interviewing more than a couple of researchers from various places during the week, and they reminded me that still the language franca of the dark web of the bad guys is not English, right?
Very often it's not.
Well, one of their biggest barriers, it's not only Russian, because I've had a few Russian and Ukrainian folks. It's Russian like slang, very localized.
Yep.
And because even the Russians now recognize that the threat researchers have certain keywords that are going to get picked up in your chats and so forth. So they use idioms, they use, other words, like street words to mean something that they don't necessarily mean in language.
I actually saw this at Elliot Peterson's talk about taking down the Mirai botnet.
Yes, great talk.
And when he put up the list of one of the chats, somebody had said, doing anything, he said, "Oh, that's illegal."
Right.
And so it's illegal, split into three words so that you couldn't find it just from scanning. And I'll admit, when I first read it, because I'm reading the slide as he's sort of still talking to the high level.
You thought it was Gal Spencer?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, right? I'm like, what is Gal his nickname for this person? And then again, he says, look, he's saying that's illegal. And I'm like, oh, I'm reading it and I missed it.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of thing. And again, another thing that they pointed out to me, and I should know this, is that one of their biggest barriers to greater success is finding native English speakers to carry out some aspects of their
the things that need to engage,
that need to have language. And we should know that if you've ever gotten the call from the IRS that the cops are going to be there.
Oh, I love those. And you're like, you don't have a grasp of the language. It's really hard to convince me.
Yeah, I'm really having a hard time. Or that my social security number is going to be deactivated.
Although there is, I've talked to some folks about it, especially when you look at the Nigerian 419 scams, is there's a belief that some of that is actually intentional, which is you don't want to waste time as the adversary on somebody who's going to detect you at some point. Right. So if you put out a bunch of these signals early that you're not legitimate and the person still lets you through, there's a better
common denominator.
Right, it's sort of like doing qualification on lead generation very early.
Yeah, that's
right.
You know what? It goes to the whole thing. These folks in the dark webs and the bad actors, they run good, sound businesses.
They do, absolutely.
They network. They do business development. They have channels and partners and affiliates, just like the real.
Yeah. And I think that's the place that I think a lot of businesses on the good side of the defensive side haven't really adapted to.
No.
Is we often still think of the adversaries as being one vertically integrated thing, right? They build their botnet, they monetize, they do something, and then they monetize it. And
lone actors.
Like the people who build botnets, that's all they do for a living.
Yeah.
Right? They build the botnet, they rent it out.
But then someone else is their agent to rent it out. And then, and it's almost like a multi-level marketing thing.
Yeah, and then the person who's renting the botnet is doing it to do credential stuffing to find accounts that they can now resell. And it's almost like this combination of these networked small businesses. I really actually like that model. And plus the gig economy sort of put in together. And for them, their margins are often razor thin.
No, well, it's competitive out there.
Yeah, it is.
We're not the from Scarface. We're not the only drug dealers in town, Andy, let's talk Akamai a little bit. You know, there was a time where people just say Akamai, CDN. What do they need security for? What are they in the security game for? I'd like to think that we're beyond that, right? People
I would like to
understand.
think that, but we still do get that sometimes.
Do you?
Yep.
Or maybe I just live in a bubble.
Well, I'm glad you're in that bubble. We're trying to expand it. But
Yeah.
about between 35-40% of our revenue is now security revenue.
Really?
Yep.
And rightfully so, because when you think about it, I used to know the number off the top of my head, but I'm old and slow now. What percentage of the internet traffic do you think runs through Akamai's network?
So that's one of those really hard things to measure, because it's like, what is the true denominator here? You know, if I take traffic and it never crosses the internet because I'm delivering it locally,
Right.
does that really
You
count?
count.
You know, so you hear things like, you know, Netflix is 30% of the total internet. And you know, we have numbers that range from 15 to 30%, depending on how you measure it.
Right.
And whether you're saying, look, what about the monetizable traffic? Is it just financial transactions? And that's what we see, is that we sort of run that whole gamut. That the bulk of our traffic, if we just want to think about, you know, raw bits, is streaming media, it's software downloads. But the things that are really fascinating is the stuff that's very low bandwidth. You know,
Right.
financial transactions, retail sales, and
They're
all that's
not rich
also
media,
moving
you're right.
across
They're-
my network.
Exactly. They're not using that kind of bandwidth number, but
Yep.
in terms of their importance, it's far
Far more
outweighing
valuable.
it. I mean, no matter what the number is, suffice to say it's a good chunk.
It is a good chunk.
Okay. And let's talk about ways that Akamai, like, okay, 35 to 40% of revenue comes from security. What do these security solutions look like?
So let me start by sort of describing what we're doing to put a context for your listeners. So if you think about Akamai as a shopping mall, right? What do you buy from a shopping mall? It's a trick question. You don't buy anything from a shopping
You just
mall.
walk.
Right. Well, the shopping mall actually sells to stores.
Right.
Stores are buying from a shopping mall the ability to be in front of you and not have to worry about all the
And
infrastructure.
that's the shopping mall business.
And that's the shopping mall business.
Right.
And that's what Akamai really does. So I'm
Okay.
just the internet's mall cop. Someday I'll get a segue, but we're
Simon,
not there yet.
right, okay.
But now you can put into context. So what are the security services here, right? So there's
Okay.
the DDoS mitigation, right? So you think about it. Look, we're going to make sure that a million people can't try to race into your store to keep you from doing stuff. So we're just managing that. It's the bot management. So understanding where there are automated processes that are interacting with your website. Look, some of those are good and positive. It turns out that a big chunk of the bot traffic is stuff people paid for. Right? You hired a dynamic application security testing company. They're a bot interacting with your website. Well,
They
that's
are.
okay. But sometimes it's your competitor, and they're trying to read all of your prices so they can discount you. Maybe you don't want to let them through. Maybe it's Google. You really want Google to have a great experience so that you're up a little bit higher. And so managing all of those.
I mean, it's a so I will tell you, this hits very close to home for us. Right? So we operate, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 different destination sites now as part of media ops.
Yep.
And they're all, they're hosted by a managed WordPress host on a Google Cloud, Kubernetes, all of that good stuff. But we see, obviously we measure performance, we measure website performance, and we see obviously
Yeah.
lags and everything else. 99.9% of the time, it's bot traffic.
Yeah, it's a bot that somebody just didn't code in like sleep 5 between each request.
Yeah.
Or even sleep 1 you would be happy with.
Right.
And they just hammer you.
So being a paranoid security person, I immediately thought it was DDoS, and it must have
Yeah.
been those guys at SC Magazine. but it wasn't. I love SC Magazine. I'm kidding. But they weren't really DDoS. They were kind of semi-legitimate bots.
Yep.
But yeah, just poor hygiene on them.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. So you're giving people solutions to both detect those bots and manage them while finding the malicious bots. People who are doing credential stuffing and saying, oh, we're seeing this credential stuffing happening. And what happens is this bot will attack your website and then they attack somebody else's.
Yep.
And that's where we provide the service that the shopping mall works.
Right.
When the shoplifter shows up in your store and we rouse them out of your store, we follow them to the next store and say, look, you
This
can't even walk
right,
in.
This
Right?
can't work here.
You know, it's web application firewall services. Since you
Yep.
mentioned SC Magazine, I guess it's not verboten to say they gave us an award for the best
not
web
verboten,
application
say it.
security product. And for a product that's sort of a core piece of our platform, it's not we just released it, here's the big press. This is just managed and maintained to protect that web application. One of the things that I love that's not actually a security product per se, we don't count it as one, it's a performance product, is shopper prioritization. So if somebody's running a sale and they'd like to have a queue, we just manage that for them.
Yep.
So in the same way that when Apple releases a new product and
Yeah.
there's the security guards
No,
holding
I
you in
remember,
line,
yeah.
we'll do that.
You're queuing it.
Yeah, and then our newest one that I
Go
actually
ahead.
really like talking about is our zero trust play. And I know zero trust is the buzzword.
That's the buzzword
And
this
so everybody
year.
wants
Bing,
to
bing,
say-
bing. Everybody has a shot at
Everybody's got
tequila.
a shot at it.
Zero trust.
But here's the deal. 9 years ago, Akamai was breached in Operation Aurora.
I think I remember
Right?
that.
So
was it 9 years
nine
ago
years
already?
ago already. And coming out of that, we said we need to change how we do business. Now we had the advantage that because we had a CDN, we could rebuild our internal architecture to take advantage of the CDN. And so we built a model that says, for most of the time, our users just use web apps powered by our CDN. Just because it's an internal application, doesn't matter. To now I'm at a point that I don't actually get onto our corporate network. I don't have a VPN client on my device.
Nothing.
Everything I do, two-factor authentication wherever I am. But because we built it on our commercial service offering, we were able to turn around and productize it and sell it.
as well.
So it's probably one of the only really mature zero trust things.
Excellent.
The challenge that we see, and we've talked to a lot of customers, is everybody's talking about zero trust and nobody knows what step one is.
Well, not only step one, I think what you're going to find is once they do step one, they're not going to certainly know what step two is.
Right.
And zero trust, there's going to be a line where this is too much of a pain in the butt versus I got to do it because I need to be secure. One thing I do want to bring out, when you say it's a shopping mall, generally the shopping mall company doesn't own the stores.
Right.
In this case, a lot of these solutions are true Akamai. Prolexic DDoS that you guys bought, right? That's your DDoS.
Right, so that's one of our DDoS services, but think of that as being, that's our security guards out in the parking lot.
Okay.
Right, so we own everything except the store. So the
Got it.
store could be something like, your website. I don't own
Right.
your website. I'm not responsible for the
Exactly.
content.
I got you.
But
so
you're-
you're providing security as part of your mall services.
Right.
Truly, Paul Bart.
Yeah, that's absolutely is
Ballpark.
where I am. So
All right.
that's probably gonna be my Halloween costume this year.
Not your Patriot?
I was, something, the Patriots thing, I recognize it's scary to everybody else, but in Boston, nobody would be afraid of it.
That's true. Andy Ellis, hey man, first one to 7 buys drinks.
Awesome. Okay. That's
All
probably
right.
me now, dang it.
Yeah, well, that's why I said it. I'm a
Yeah.
dummy. Andy Ellis, CSO, Akamai Technologies, here on Digital Anarchist, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, at RSA Conference. That was a mouthful. Have a great day, everyone.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Andy. Excuse me. Andy's really a great interview, and just, if you get a chance to read anything he writes or watch him, he keynoted at RSA this year as well, Andy. So thanks to Andy for doing that. Now back to our next is one of our usual segments here on TechStrong TV, and it features Mitchell Ashley, CEO, co-founder of Accelerated Strategies Group, with his Analyst Corner. Mitchell, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. We're doing a special edition today on a white paper that was issued by Gary Gruber, analyst with Accelerated Strategies Group. And we have Gary on the podcast as well as Sanjeev Sharma. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good. Good to have you. So value stream mapping, that is, sort of the top of the list, whatever is the next buzzwordy thing sort of evolves to the top of the list. Right now it's value stream mapping, which means a lot of people are talking about it. I'm not sure if everybody knows or have experienced what they're talking about, which I'm guessing may be part of why you wrote the paper, because the title is Applying Value Stream Mapping to Software. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration. Why did you decide to write about this, Gary?
Well, a lot of the way I look at and analyze companies that I document in engineering the digital transformation could be considered a form of value stream mapping that I found highlights the biggest issues that are causing waste and inefficiencies for large organizations. But what I realized is when I went to a lot of the clients and they showed me their value stream mapping, it was something completely different. And it wasn't doing a very good job of highlighting the issues. So I really wanted to take a time and step back and say, okay, here's the history of value stream mapping. Here's how some people apply it to software development. And here's some things that I see missing that doesn't come out of the typical analysis that I see.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the misconceptions or misapplications of value stream mapping that you saw or you see in companies?
Well, probably the biggest difference is there are types of things that you do one at a time, which is similar to what you do in manufacturing, where you create a product or a part one at a time. And when you're looking at creating a new idea or sizing an idea or estimating its effort or really even starting development, those are things that you do one at a time. And that's similar to manufacturing. Or there's things that are similar to how business process engineering has been used value stream mapping, where it talks about handoffs between different organizations and going through that. That if you're doing things one at a time, value stream mapping, the traditional way, is really good at pointing that out. But what happens in a lot of large organizations is their biggest source of inefficiencies is how do you bring together a lot of requirements together and release something all at once. And that whole release process, what I see when you just track one requirement through it, it doesn't highlight the types of issues that you see in that process.
So it's really through a repetitive process. If you went through multiple times, that's when you start to see some of the learnings and issues.
Well, it's grouping a bunch of requirements together into release. And maybe you can't release as frequently as you want, and you've got a big delay because one of the requirements isn't ready, and the rest of the requirements that are ready are bunched into that release. Or maybe somebody hasn't built in quality, and you've got a big hardening phase. So there's different things that really show up in the release process that don't show up when you're analyzing one requirement at a time.
Interesting. Now I know Sanjeev, you asked Sanjeev to do a foreword to this paper. And other than being just a good all-around good guy, why did you ask Sanjeev to write about this?
You know, as somebody who goes into large organizations and works on helping to drive change, and I run across a lot of different people. When I've run across Sanjeev, he's probably got as much or more experience in that space as anybody I've interacted with and seen. And because we have seen common issues and we've seen common problems, we've ended up having a pretty common view of the world. And he's used value stream mapping a lot, and he's done it in hundreds of places when he was at IBM. And it helps you form an opinion of the types of things that organizations are struggling with. And, you know, because of that background and experience, he sees, I think, similar things in organizations that I've been able to see.
Interesting. Sanjeev, when you read, now you wrote a foreword to it, kind of a sidebar to it. When you read Gary's paper, what stood out for you? Were there either a confirmation of things you believed or some new insights? What did you pick out of it?
Yeah, I mean, both, right? I mean, first of all, it was confirmation because, as Gary mentioned, there are a lot of misconceptions about value stream mapping, and there's a lot of ways people misapply value stream mapping in the IT world, right? And value stream mapping is obviously not new. If you go back and read work from the lean movement back in the 50s and the 60s, value stream mapping has been around. And the question always arises is how do you apply it to the IT world, where the widgets which are passing through, the assets which are passing through and being developed through the value stream are not identical, right? If I'm making a car or manufacturing something, everything going through the pipeline is identical, and I can optimize how to develop it. But in software, everything that goes through the pipeline through every sprint or iteration is unique. That's the whole point. I'm not writing the same code over and over again. So the levers and the parameters you can tune to optimize it also change, quite frankly, based on what you're attacking right now. And I think that part is where the distinction is tremendous. And which is one of the points Gary was trying to make, is that you cannot say I looked at one flow through the value stream map and I know exactly where all the problems are. No, the next flow through the value stream map could be very different because you're trying to solve a different problem. Maybe you're attacking a new area which you're not familiar with, or you're retiring technical debt. All those variables become make this a more complex problem to solve. But generally, as Gary said, once you've gone to enough large organizations, we find some of the major challenges are the same. And it has all to do with the maturity of the organization and their ability to understand, where are the inefficiencies, where is the waste in the value stream, where is the weight states in the value stream, where is there rework happening. That recognition is what's important.
Do you think there's?
It's a brilliant paper to read. And I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of value out of what Gary's written.
I'm curious, Gary, is sometimes IT organizations get stuck in the order-taking mode where they're just responding to requests, and not really. They can't get out of the digging the ditch deeper to sort of work on how they create software so that they can start to implement not just building things, but measuring, looking at the value stream process and see what they're actually doing. Do you see that as a common factor of where people get kind of off track or maybe not even get started, or there are some other common barriers?
No, it's finding the time and the bandwidth to really sharpen the saw that a lot of organizations start with, but that's not really the part I was trying to address with this paper. I was trying to sort of say, okay, the people who've done the effort and done the value stream mapping are going to go invest in it to identify their biggest sources of waste so they can make it visible to everybody and get people aligned on making the improvements. If you don't do it with the idea that you need to treat the release process different than the parts of the process where you're able to do one thing at a time, where you're trying to batch a bunch of stuff together. If you don't treat that differently, you're not going to highlight what I see when I go into organizations as some of their biggest sources of waste and inefficiencies. You'll get some things and you'll get some valuable things, but one of the biggest challenges is getting momentum and energy around a continuous improvement journey. And if you don't start by really solving some real problems for people fairly soon up front, you're going to lose momentum in that transformation. And if you do the value stream mapping wrong, I've seen a lot of organizations spend 6 months getting all the data, doing the value stream mapping, walk in and look at it, and because they didn't address some of these common mistakes I see, it really didn't highlight the issues that were keeping them from releasing on a more frequent basis. And that's, I sat through several, I did a bunch of DevOps chats, and people showed me some value stream maps, and they just weren't pointing out the issues that were slowing them down. And I had to spend some time helping them understand, well, if you look at it differently and you highlight these things, do these feel more like to your organizations where there's waste and inefficiencies? And that came across a lot. So really trying to, with the Avengers, we're trying to make knowledge free. And if I've seen people make mistakes before, can I help them avoid those same mistakes again? Go make new ones, please, so everybody else can learn from those. But let's not continue to make the same ones over and over again.
Gary, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
can
go
I
for
ask
it,
a question, if it's okay, right? What are the typical techniques people are using? When you see a value stream map, right, there are several ways to do a value stream map. One is where you're actually using, very detailed measurements to say, on these kind of tasks, people are spending this many minutes and then moving on. I personally find those very unrealistic in terms of measuring inefficiencies. Do you think people are overanalyzing or underanalyzing or just analyzing the wrong things when they do these value stream maps?
Well, in some cases, it's really easy to get data out of your requirements tracking process. So the easy thing to do in a value stream mapping is just take all your requirements and track how long does it take to move from each phase or each state of a requirement all the way to where it's released to the customer, and using those times to frame things as opposed to thinking about really how the process works. So yeah, maybe it's not the types of things that you saw when you were going in to do a value stream mapping because you're taking it as a high level. But I just kept running across organization after organization that was pulling data out of the requirements tool and doing analysis based on that because it was an easy way to get good data to give them information.
Do you think they're doing that because one of the views is value stream mapping as being able to tie, we sent these requirements in, did we get them out of the process? So trying to tie it back to the business value, is that important but sort of gets you off track from understanding the underlying process?
Well, if you look at the roots of value stream mapping from the lean movement, it really started around you're supposed to measure from request by the customer to cash from the customer. So that whole process from one end to the other of when they've asked for something and when you deliver that value. Then when you're doing that one at a time, it can help you understand where excess inventory is building up or where things are getting stopped in the process. But what I see happen with most organizations is, that classic type of value stream mapping can tell you whether you have too much inventory and requirements or you have too much front-end loaded stuff. But the biggest issue I see happening for most organizations is just being able to take a bunch of code that's developed and ready by a bunch of different developers, or they think it's ready, and run it through the release process and find all the defects and do all the testing and get it to the customer. And that's kind of spawned this whole initiative around DevOps, is how do we get better at that piece? And the classic value stream mapping kind of points out, yeah, we got a long period and we got a big delay here, but it doesn't give you any information about it. And it's really when you get down more into the details of understanding what are the types of things that slow that release process down. And those are the types of things that I really tried to highlight in my Engineering the Digital Transformation book, is to more of a systematic approach to analyzing, what does it take to go from this end to that end, and how do you identify the biggest sources of waste, and how do you get people going on a continuous improvement journey?
Do you think having a process like this, think of it as a quality process, value stream mapping, total quality management, does that make it easier to raise issues within the organization of, in quality, you celebrate when you find the delays, when you find waste, because those are things, you prioritize, figure out what the impact is, and then go address them. But in other organizations without that structure, that's bad news, right? You don't want to be the messenger and get shot for delivering, hey, we're really bad at this part. Does that structure give you more kind of cover to work some of those issues in the organization?
Maybe a little bit. It's unique in the waste in business process at reengineering or manufacturing is a lot more visible than it is in software. A lot of times in software, the engineers closest to the problems are the only ones seeing and feeling the waste, and it's not visible to different people in the organization. So there may be some trust issues with making this visible. But I don't know, Sanjeev, what are your experiences when you go into companies and start providing visibility to some of the opportunities?
I think how to map eventual business value back to an individual software component or an individual delay in the value stream is still an unsolved problem. in most organizations, right? How do you tie that back and say, because we have this delay or because there is a inefficiency in my value stream map, it's resulting in X% loss of revenue. That metric in a factory environment is very easy to make, right? If it takes me, 20 minutes less time to paint my car, well, I can calculate how many more cars I can make. But measuring that in the IT world and tying that to revenue is extremely difficult. So I think that is still an unsolved problem, where how can we show the value of fixing something, right? And there have been all kinds of techniques which have been used to try to measure that, to say, where are the developers spending time? Are they fixing stuff? Are they, but I think it's still a struggle, right? And I don't know if you've seen anything different in terms of successful techniques to quantify that this inefficiency, waste, weight, or rework, which I found in the value stream while I was assessing it, is resulting in loss of business of Y, right? And that X to Y correlation is so fuzzy. I've really seen a lot of companies struggle with it and not be able to, effectively, and what that results in is they don't invest effectively resources to fix a problem because they don't know how to quantify it and how much investment should be made.
Yeah, it's age-old problem of how do you measure productivity in software. And I finally decided I couldn't, because tell me any metric and I'll tell you how I'm going to game it. But what I think I've gotten good at measuring is the waste that's slowing down flow. So whether it's a lack of building in quality, whether it's engineers having to debug environment issues, whether it's engineers having to debug triage issues, what I tried to do in my Engineering the Digital Transformation book is get past the how do I measure productivity to that's unreliable and unrepeatable to how do I measure waste, which is very reliable and repeatable, so that I can say that when I made a change, here's the waste that I was able to eliminate, so that you can quantify the impact of the change. Because you're right, the first part is making the process visible. The second part is getting people aligned on the biggest opportunity for improvement. But if you don't follow that up quickly with being able to demonstrate to the business that you've really removed waste and inefficiencies, you're going to have a hard time sustaining your continuous improvement journey and the investments that need to be made.
Great.
Very good.
Understood.
Sorry, there we go. I'm back. I'm curious, in your paper, you talk a lot about the bottleneck, manufacturing bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of pivot and talk about the Kanban process, which we know from Toyota with the signal cards and everything. How do those two things mesh together when you're talking about the manufacturing process? Here's where the bottleneck is. And then is a Kanban another way of sort of measuring or monitoring that process, or is it for other things?
Well, Kanban, Goldratt said there's a bottleneck and we should optimize everything around that. What Tiacho Ono did is came in and sort of said, no, when you have a really large, complex organization building a lot of different parts, that bottleneck can move and shift around. Mm-hmm. And instead of just focusing in on one bottleneck and releasing work into the front end based on that, he worked on Kanban, which enabled the efficient flow of inventory through all the different parts and processes. And he found that that optimized a large, complex organization that he was running much better than just drum buffer rope. And the analogy to software for either of those is more around understanding how do you release work into the system so that you're not building up excess inventory. So I think that's really important for the front end of the process, from when you have an idea to when you release the work to when the developer's done. That similar analogy and thought process for how do you release work applies really well. And the business process engineering side of it of minimizing handoffs works really well. When you get into the release process, because the release process takes every single requirement that's ready and runs it through as a batch size of however large, you're really not finding the same types of issues with that. So you really need a different process to think about how do we quantify and measure the biggest sources of waste that are slowing down the release of a large batch of inventory, and because it can process all the requirements that are ready, it's not really, there's no bottleneck in the manufacturing process of build the code, deploy the code, create an environment, run the test. That can be done the same amount of time and energy for one line of code as 100,000 lines of code. Now, if you go to really large batch sizes, your bottleneck quickly moves to the whole triage process and getting it fixed so you can release. But it shifts around, and it's worth thinking about the bottleneck. But from a value stream mapping, I'd say my biggest observation is the types of mapping that we've seen done historically work for things that are done in a fixed batch size type of thing. And when you move to software that enables you to process so many things at once, we need to think about how do we map that process for doing all those pieces together as a unit as opposed to an aggregate of a bunch of little items.
You know, it seems like a really important concept that I took away from the paper too is, in a way, if it was the same bottleneck, the same place every time, pretty easy to identify it. Hopefully you fix it, right, if it's significant enough. But when it moves around, that's when it's hard, right? What are the root causes or the causality around why that's happening, and is that what forces it to shift? And it may appear random, but it's not when you start to look at the underlying, events that occur.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that is common between Sanjeev and I, having gone in a lot of organizations, is one of our biggest challenges in getting people to commit to making improvements is working to make it visible. And whether you did it, exactly like I've been doing in engineering the transformation, or the way Sanjeev did with hundreds of these, what's your experience with once people sort of are able to see the process? What kind of reactions were you getting?
It was all over the place, right? I mean, again, eventually what people care about is how is this going to improve one of the three metrics, right? Is it going to improve my cost, which is tied back to speed of delivery? Is it going to improve my quality? Or is it going to improve time to market, right? And that's, the three metrics people care about. And eventually it boiled down to, finding where those inefficiencies are, determining a root cause, and giving recommendations which could be tactically acted upon. And some of them could not be. It would take a long time for certain recommendations or mitigation steps one could take to be acted upon, and the amount of investment needed was also very high. So I think the reactions are unfortunately all over the place because it depends on several factors. One is the willingness of the organization to change. Having the right executive sponsorship to drive the change, I think this is really important. And the third is the willingness to make the necessary investments, both in terms of money and the organizational disruption it would take to make those changes. And sometimes that's what holds people back more than even, monetary investment is, I've got these boundaries and silos and organizational structures and political fiefdoms which have been around for a long time. You're asking me to disrupt them. I don't know if I want to go down that path. And I've had some very heart-to-heart conversations with senior executives to say, you're not solving any problem if you don't go down that path. And, if you can't do it, who can? Let's talk to that person.
Right.
So receptions have been all over the place.
Yeah, and they have, but it's almost every one I've done is like, oh, really? That's how our process works? I wasn't aware.
Yes, that aside.
Really,
yes,
that's kind of embarrassing. I didn't know we did that. And a lot of times when I do a workshop, people get really excited about solving it. The challenge I have is about half of them follow through, and about half of them finish the workshop all excited about it, and then decide to go back to their day.
Nothing happened.
And never really follow through and do anything. So
inertia, momentum, tough things to overcome.
Yeah, and to that end, for the immediate reaction after a workshop, I think there are two of them which stand out very, very, very significantly in my mind. And one was the CIO of a large financial services company. And as we are walking out after doing a very long, and we went way over time while doing that workshop. As I was walking out with the room with him, he pulled me aside and said, "This is the first time all my direct reports were in the room, and were together trying to solve problems and understand challenges rather than pointing at each other and saying, he's the cause or she's the cause of my problem. So that was one. And it was that, he's like, we need to do this again in 6 months. And I did go back and do it again. The other one was like yours, where I'm walking out and, the whole group of us went across the street to a restaurant nearby, and we're just sitting there, and, one of them, you could see from his body language that he's feeling defeated. He's like, I never realized we were this bad. So, this is how bad things were. And, thanks for, exposing our own dirty laundry to us. And I think it becomes a question of, do people question certain processes and say, why are we doing this? And sometimes you need an external third-party entity to, like you and I, to come in and say, why are you doing this? Tell me, something broke 5 years ago and you created this process, or it just organically evolved into this, or somebody thought it was a great idea, or you went to a conference and heard somebody does this and you decided to do it. That self-re-examining and self-awareness of how organizations do things, it is amazing how lacking that is in a lot of organizations. And I'm not saying all organizations, in a lot of them.
The one that really stood out for me is the CIO had everybody working against each other because they saw what they were doing to each other. And when you took it away from them and you put it up on the wall and you created a map and you showed them they could work together on the problem instead of working against each other. And I think when you can make the process visible and you can make the opportunities for them visible, I think everybody comes to work wanting to do a good job, wanting to do a better job. And when you can make it visible and make the opportunities for improvement visible, then I think you've got a good shot at that continuous improvement journey. But I think, Sanjeev, you're right. You need to start having some metrics that can show what you were able to do and the value to the business, or else you're going to lose momentum on it. And that's why I kind of moved to measuring waste and being able to quantify the waste that's removed. I know it's not down to your 3 metrics of lead time, cost, and the other piece, but I think people can look at it and fundamentally see, okay, for those sources of waste, I get it. That I can't quite translate it to those key metrics, but I get that when I made this change, I have less of that waste.
Well, good. Why don't we wrap this up on that good note about folks getting together and working out problems. They may have been working against each other on a day-to-day basis. I want to mention a couple things to our listeners, to our watchers. Both of you have mentioned workshops. Both of you do workshops around value stream mapping as well as other things. So it's something that we offer through Accelerated Strategies. Also, I want to mention the 20-minute consult, free consult that we have. So either one of those, you can go to the Accelerated Strategies website, accelst.com, and there's a bio there. Bio for Sanjeev, bio for Gary, and you can right there sign up for a 20-minute consult. So, and it's free. And it's exactly to have this initial conversation to say, hey, we're struggling with this. What do we do? And maybe Gary's got a really solid approach for you, or maybe Sanjeev's got a different twist that might be a better approach to it. Just we can match the right need to the right organization. So definitely would love to have folks check out that. And of course, there's a lot of other great free content there. Knowledge wants to be free, right? On the website. Well, thanks, gentlemen. It's been a great podcast. I've enjoyed talking with you and also learning from you, too.
Yeah, it's great.
Take care.
Thanks for the nice introduction to the white paper, Sanjeev. And hopefully everybody gets a chance to take a look at it. I think it's only like 5 or 6 pages, so it shouldn't take you too long.
I think it's pretty easy read, good consumable, nice length. So great job on it, both of you. Thank you much.
All right. See you guys.
Take care.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Okay, thanks very much, Mitchell. That was great. I hope you guys enjoyed it out there. Next up on TechStrong TV is another kind of reoccurring segment we're going to be doing, and that features none other than the channel Vizard himself, Mike Vizard, on Channel News. Mike, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Alan. So we're 10 days into this, folks, in the channel, and we've learned a couple of things so far. First of all, panicking never helped anybody. So I know it's tempting right now to be a little bit glum, but there are pockets of opportunity. Second thing is, I've heard some of you guys kind of subscribe to this theory that maybe we should just suck it up and the cure is allegedly worse than the disease. But I would point out that, well, in history, if you look back at any pandemic, there's never been a boom time while the pandemic is on. And the reason for that is the average person just doesn't want to go to work and risk their life because there's a disease floating around. So I think the best course for everybody is to kind of hunker down and try to get through this with as many short-term fatalities as possible, because this disease is pretty nasty. It doesn't just kill people, it makes them linger. So think about it long and hard before you make a case for let's go back to work tomorrow. But let's look at some of the bright spots, at least, or at least some opportunities for channel partners. So HP is putting out some numbers that would suggest that sales of PCs, monitors, and other assorted peripherals is up. And the reason for that is people are working from home, just like this broadcast. And as that happens, they're going to need to have those devices eventually managed. And most internal IT organizations are not really set up to do that. So I think partners have an opportunity to start pushing out agent software to all these brand new PC devices that will help people manage those services. And they might be managed by the MSP, or they might be co-managed with the internal IT organization and the MSP working together. There's many ways to skin that cat, and I would start thinking through that process. The other thing is service desk augmentation is going to be a huge opportunity. The fact of the matter is there are going to be job cuts, and people aren't going to have enough IT guys to handle not just their internal IT service calls, but their customer service calls. A lot of stuff is sold digitally these days, especially around education and entertainment. So I think partners might want to think about, how do I help augment somebody's service desk, not just the internal help desk, but the customer-facing service desk? I think that's going to be a significant opportunity sooner than later. I would also point out remote access tools. All these different applications that we've been using in the office have been tied to a LAN for a long time, and most of them are not exactly readily accessible remotely. You're seeing a lot of interest now in people working from home or trying to access those applications, and that's putting a lot of pressure on a way to make that happen that's easy, seamless, and not nearly as difficult as, say, ripping and replacing them and putting in a SaaS app and trying to retrain everybody to use that app. So I think remote access tools is going to be a big deal for the next 3 to 6 months at least. Collaboration tools. Everybody can go online today and just fire up a video collaboration app like Zoom, and they're doing it left, right, and center. But a lot of companies still need to license that software. They still need to figure out what the best practices are for using that software. I think many of you have been on a couple of these meetings now where once you get past 4 or 5 people, it gets a little chaotic. I think partners can start offering some consulting services about how to have a meeting online and how to be efficient with those tools and how to make, actual productivity work, because a lot of people are going to start tuning out if they keep dialing into these meetings and everybody's talking over each other and nobody has an understanding of how to present their slides. It's just kind of messy right now. Other thing is wireless bandwidth. We're all on shared internet at home. As you probably all figured out by now, this internet kind of stinks. And it's not nearly as good as the internet you had in the office. I think as we get a little further down the path, people are going to be looking for wireless access devices that they can plug right into their PCs and access these different services that are out there that are now being made more broadly available by the telcos. I think there's an opportunity for partners to play a significant role in that. Maybe it may even mean you're going to have to send somebody out to visit somebody and declare them an essential worker. But I don't know, maybe everybody could drive by and hand off a PC or something and get their upgrade in a parking lot somewhere. Who knows? Cloud services, meanwhile, will accelerate. Today, we think maybe 60 to 70% of all apps are still running on premise. You can bet as we go forward that a lot more workloads are heading into the cloud for sure. You can remotely manage them and you can see where they are from anywhere in the world, and you can use them from anywhere in the world. So at least going forward here, I would think about the cloud now as going to be a priority. It may not happen overnight, but it's definitely going to head that way. Other things that are going to be bigger issues too, is everything is going to be more remote, is flat out managed security services might even actually expand. I know it's hard to get those skills, but if you think about where we are right now, there's more attacks coming with this COVID-19 label attached to them in the form of phishing attacks or in the form of malware being distributed through fake sites or whatever it may be. This is unconscionable. Some of this stuff is even mean. They're like basically telling people they're going to infect them with COVID-19 if they don't pay up on their ransomware. It's kind of crazy out there these days, but that means that people are going to be looking for help to combat those threats, and they're going to look to channel partners quickly. I would think we should look towards zero trust networks. I think we're all having a little experience with these VPNs right now that weren't really designed for remote access at scale, and certainly for not these numbers of users, and everybody's complaining about it. So I think maybe there'll be a shift now towards zero trust networks where we know who the person on the other end is, we send them a URL, and they click right onto the network because we've authenticated them using multi-factor authentication. There's a lot of these services out there already. You might want to start thinking about repping some of those. Also, think back in time when we had the last major downturn. That's when you started hearing the mantra, open source first. And the reason for that is kind of not because everybody loves open source per se. It's because they'd rather hold on to their employees if possible and not pay the commercial licensing fees, because the employees in their minds are the value that they have in terms of IP and intellectual capital. And if that's the case, they'll do almost anything to hold on to that, including using open source software that may or may not be as good as the commercial software. Eventually, though, they're going to need somebody to support that stuff. And I think there's an opportunity for partners to think a little bit more long-term about saying, hey, there's all this open source software going to be in use out there. It's only a matter of time before somebody comes looking for help to manage it. Finally, automation. And we talk a lot about DevOps in this world, but the fact of the matter is there's going to be fewer people asked to do more. That's all the very nature of a downturn. And that means they're going to be looking for people who have the expertise to help them automate things. Everybody knows that just about everything can be automated in the IT space. No one's really gone out to do it because it's hard, it's difficult, and it requires a lot of expertise. That expertise exists among the channel partners. So I would just say to everybody, hey, these are tough times and it's not going to be easy, but if we think about it a bit and we focus a little bit, there is opportunity. Thanks, Alan.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, thanks very much, Mike, and I appreciate you giving us a little peek into the channel here as we continue to find our way through these times. You know what, guys? That's going to wrap up today's show. I feel like we're getting our legs under us a little bit. It's moving. We're evolving. We're getting better at this, and we'll only get better. I thank you for sitting through and watching it. I hope we provided some entertainment, some news, some help in passing through the day. I was serious about what I said about isolation, depression, stuff like that. Don't let getting holed up at home hold you back. Get out, enjoy some sunshine, talk to people, not in person or too close, but talk to people. That we're human. It's part of our human condition. I'm going to see you tomorrow, hopefully here on TechStrong TV. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Media Ops, the Digital Anarchist Network. Have a great day.